The Saturday morning farmers market in Copper Ridge was usually peaceful, but today Malcolm Pierce noticed the trouble before it started. At 58 and carrying an extra 100 pounds from years of retirement, he'd grown used to being underestimated. The faded overalls and worn baseball cap completed the picture of a simple rancher buying supplies. Three young men in expensive streetwear were working their way through the market, radiating arrogance. Malcolm recognized the type immediately: the Vega crew, a gang that had been expanding their territory into rural areas, targeting isolated properties for drug operations. "Look at this fat old farmer," one of them said loudly, blocking Malcolm's path. His name was Rico. Local intelligence suggested he was the nephew of the gang's leader. "Takes up the whole aisle, doesn't he?" Malcolm adjusted his shopping basket, his expression remaining neutral. Years of commanding elite units had taught him when to engage and when to observe. This wasn't the time. "Excuse me, gentlemen," Malcolm said politely, trying to move around them. Rico stepped closer, deliberately bumping into Malcolm's shoulder. "Nah, I don't think so. You need to learn some respect, maybe do some push-ups, lose that gut." His friends laughed, recording the confrontation on their phones. The vendor, Maria Santos, watched nervously. The Vega gang had been pressuring local businesses for protection money, and nobody wanted to be their next target. "What's wrong, old man?" Rico sneered, shoving Malcolm's chest. "Too fat to fight back? Too scared?" Malcolm's eyes, which had seemed dull and tired moments before, sharpened for just an instant. He calculated distances, assessed threats, noted the concealed weapons in their waistbands. But he said nothing, simply stepping back. "That's what I thought," Rico laughed. "Just another soft old coward. This whole town's full of them." Malcolm completed his shopping in silence and returned to his ranch. But Maria Santos noticed something the gang members didn't: the way Malcolm moved despite his weight, the awareness in his eyes, the calculated calm that wasn't fear but something far more dangerous. That evening, she made a phone call to her brother, a retired sheriff's deputy. "Remember that name you mentioned once? Colonel Malcolm Pierce? I think he's living here." The deputy was quiet for a moment. "If that's who I think it is, those boys just poked a sleeping bear." Malcolm Pierce commanded the Ghost Battalion in 3 classified operations. They called him Anvil because everything that came against him got hammered flat. The Vega gang's mockery of Malcolm spread through their network like wildfire. The video went viral in local criminal circles, held up as proof that rural targets were soft and easy. Within a week, the gang escalated their operations, targeting 3 ranches in the area with intimidation tactics. Malcolm watched it all from his ranch, which sat on a strategic hilltop, overlooking the valley. His home office contained equipment that would surprise anyone who thought he was just a simple farmer: satellite communications, encrypted networks, and direct lines to people in places that didn't officially exist. He made his first call to James Chen, who'd served as his intelligence officer for 15 years. "Chen, I need background on the Vega organization. Full workup." "Anvil," Chen's voice carried surprise and pleasure. "Thought you'd retired for good. What's the situation?" "Local gang thinks they can turn my valley into their distribution hub. They're expanding into rural areas, targeting isolated properties." "Want me to pull some strings, get law enforcement involved?" "Not yet," Malcolm replied. "They humiliated me publicly, made it personal. I want to understand what we're dealing with first." The intelligence came back within 24 hours. The Vega gang was more sophisticated than typical street criminals: military tactics, organized hierarchy, connections to major cartels. Their leader, Carlos Vega, was former Mexican military who'd gone private. But Chen's report included something else. "Malcolm, they're planning something big. Intercepted communications suggest they're targeting your property specifically. They think taking down the fat old rancher who didn't fight back will establish their dominance in the region." Malcolm smiled grimly. "Good. Let them come." His next calls went to 4 other members of his old unit: Sarah Phantom Williams, who could infiltrate any organization; Marcus Hammer Johnson, whose specialty was close quarters combat; Tech Sergeant Lisa Circuit Rodriguez, who could hack anything electronic; and medical specialist Robert Doc Patterson. They arrived quietly over the next 2 days, looking like visiting relatives or farm workers. Nobody in town noticed that Malcolm Pierce had just assembled one of the most lethal special operations teams in military history. The transformation of Malcolm's ranch began immediately. Circuit installed surveillance systems that would make intelligence agencies jealous. Phantom infiltrated the local gang network, gathering intel. Hammer assessed defensive positions. Every move was professional. invisible, and devastating in its efficiency. "They're coming in 3 days," Phantom reported, after a meeting with low-level gang members. 20 men, heavily armed. They plan to burn your barn, kill your livestock, and beat you on camera as a message to other property owners. Malcolm studied the tactical maps spread across his table. His ranch had been chosen carefully when he retired. Multiple defensive positions, clear fields of fire, natural choke points. He'd never intended to use them, but old habits had guided his choice. "Carlos Vega will be there personally," Circuit added, monitoring gang communications. "He wants to film himself confronting the fat coward who backed down at the market." "Perfect," Malcolm said quietly. "Let's give them a show they won't forget." The night before the attack, Malcolm visited each business owner in town. He didn't explain everything, but he gave clear instructions. "Tomorrow evening, close early. Keep your families inside. Trust me." Maria Santos studied his face. "You're not who you pretend to be, are you?" "I'm exactly who I've always been," Malcolm replied. "Just with a past I tried to leave behind. They shouldn't have made it personal." The Vega gang arrived exactly when Phantom predicted, their convoy of vehicles rolling up Malcolm's long driveway with arrogant confidence. 20 men, armed with automatic weapons, prepared to terrorize an overweight rancher. Malcolm stood on his porch, still wearing his faded overalls, still looking soft and vulnerable. Rico stepped out first, camera ready. "Remember me, fat man," Rico called out. "Time to teach you what happens when you disrespect us." "I remember," Malcolm replied calmly. "You made a critical tactical error." Carlos Vega emerged from the lead vehicle, laughing. "Listen to him. Tactical error? You're a farmer, old man, a fat, scared farmer who's about to learn—" "Colonel Malcolm Pierce, United States Army Special Operations Command." "Retired," Malcolm interrupted. "Former commander of the Ghost Battalion. They called me Anvil. You should have done your research." The gang members hesitated, confused. Then Carlos laughed harder. "Special operations? You? Look at you. You can't even see your own feet." "You're right," Malcolm nodded. "I gained weight, got soft living. But you know what I didn't lose? 30 years of tactical experience. And you just drove your entire operation into a kill zone designed by someone who wrote the manual on rural asymmetric warfare." Circuit triggered the first system. Spotlights blazed to life, destroying the gang's night vision advantage. Their vehicle's electrical systems simultaneously died, electromagnetic pulse devices hidden in the driveway. "What the hell?" Carlos shouted, reaching for his weapon. "I wouldn't," Phantom's voice came from the darkness. She'd positioned herself on the barn roof with a precision rifle. "You're all in my sights, all 20 of you." Hammer emerged from another position, his weapon trained on the gang's left flank. Doc covered the right. They moved with the fluid precision of operators who'd executed hundreds of missions together. Malcolm descended from his porch, and despite his weight, his movement carried undeniable authority. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to disarm. You're going to sit down, and you're going to wait for the sheriff who Circuit called 15 minutes ago with a full dossier of your operation, including every crime you've committed in this county." "You can't do this," Rico shouted. "We're 20 armed men." "You were 20 armed men," Malcolm corrected. "Now, you're 20 confused boys who brought weapons to a tactical operation. There's a difference." Carlos Vega stared at Malcolm, finally seeing past the weight to the hard intelligence in his eyes, the way he commanded his team, the professional precision of their operation. "You really are." "I really am," Malcolm confirmed. "And you made 2 mistakes. First, you judged capability by appearance. Second, you humiliated me publicly. I spent my career eliminating threats to national security. You think I'd let a gang threaten my community?" The sheriff's vehicles arrived, along with federal agents. Circuit had made several calls. The Vega gang was taken into custody without a single shot fired. The evidence Circuit had compiled would put most of them away for decades. As the last vehicle pulled away, Maria Santos approached cautiously. "Colonel Pierce, why didn't you tell anyone who you were?" Malcolm looked out over his valley, peaceful once again in the moonlight. "Because I came here to leave that life behind, to be just a rancher. But they made it personal, threatened my neighbors, some things you don't walk away from." "The way you moved tonight," she said carefully. "You're not as, fat?" Malcolm smiled. "Oh, I am. Definitely overweight, definitely out of shape compared to my active duty days. But they confused physical condition with capability. My body changed, but my mind didn't. Tactics, strategy, leadership. Those don't require a six-pack. His team gathered around him, their mission complete. They'd come without hesitation, retired operators responding to their old commander's call. Same time next year for the reunion, Hammer joked. Let's hope it's just a barbecue next time, Malcolm replied. No tactical operations required. As his team departed and life returned to normal, Malcolm reflected on the incident. The gang had seen an overweight old man and assumed weakness. They'd mistaken kindness for cowardice, patience for fear. The video of the market confrontation still circulated, but now it had a different context. Word spread through criminal networks about what happened when you underestimated the fat rancher in Copper Ridge. The property crimes in the area stopped completely. Malcolm Pierce went back to his quiet life, shopping at the farmer's market, tending his ranch. People in town treated him with new respect, though he discouraged it. I'm just a rancher, he'd say with a smile. But everyone knew better now. Sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who don't look threatening. Sometimes the greatest strength hides behind the most ordinary appearance. And sometimes mocking the overweight man at the market is the last mistake you ever make.